I'm Frostin' Austin.
I'm Isaac the Iceman.
I'm Molly.
And this is Macy.
We sold everything.
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 In pursuit of the unknown, with our trucks, boat, and fifth wheel, to chase wild adventure, to escape the monotony of life, to explore the great outdoors, fishing and hunting, to grow deeper as a family and enjoy God's creation, to make memories that will last generations. Join us on our journey. Hey, before we get started in today's video, all the rods, reels, baits, all the swim bait equipment I use day in, day out, guiding, producing videos, everything is down in the description. I would appreciate you if you supported those links and helped me produce more content just like this to see you guys become better anglers. Let's get after it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Frostin', and today I wanted to talk about the top 5 mistakes that beginner swim baiters make when they're getting into swim baiting, right? Swim baiting is so fun. It's so cool. It's such a mesmerizing way to catch big bass. I mean, you're using giant baits the size of your hand to chase giant fish. And here's the deal. It's also very intimidating. And here's another point. There's a lot of things that can totally go wrong, and people make so many mistakes early on. And today I wanted to help you avoid a lot of mistakes that I made early on with swim baiting. So I've been a swim bait guide for over a decade, Western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and North Georgia. I now travel the country with my family, throwing big swim baits, chasing giant bass everywhere. These mistakes I talk about today are not in any specific order. So don't get caught up in saying, hey, this is the biggest mistake or this is the smallest mistake. I want you to just take everything I say and say, hey, those are things that I need to take into consideration when I'm thinking about getting into swim baiting, when I'm swim baiting, if you're already swim baiting, or even as you are a veteran or have been doing it for quite some time. You should think about it. So without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, I think a lot of beginner swim baiters start out going too small. So a lot of guys, they say, hey man, you know, I'm just now getting into swim baiting. What is a swim bait that you think would be a great beginner swim bait? And a lot of times I'm pointing them to 8+ inch baits, whether it's a Deps 250, whether it's a big bull shad, whether it's a River to Sea S-Waver, a Gancraft Magnum 230, just bigger swim baits. And like, whoa, I don't think I want to start with those. And I'm immediately like, hold on, wait. You asked me my opinion. Let me tell you why. The reason is because bass follow baits because of their lateral line. They detect a lot of movement because of their lateral line that goes into their spinal cortex, everything with their brain. They can detect movement and they hunt. If a bait moves more water, it means it will get more followers. The more followers you get is the more data you can take in and make decisions on how bass set up. But also the more followers you get, the more bass that are naturally going to eat your bait, the more bass that naturally eat your bait, you're going to land. So without question, I always tell people, I would rather you start big with a glide bait so you can immediately start taking data, so you can start collecting data. Hey, I got a follower off of that dock. Maybe later you turn around with a wacky rig, you go catch it. Hey, I got a follower off of that boulder. Hey, I've never seen any fish in this region of the lake. You throw the glide bait, they start coming out of nooks and crannies you didn't even know bass could get in. And all of a sudden you're like, holy cow. It starts data collection, where if you're throwing a smaller glide bait, you're not moving as much water, which means you're not getting as many followers, which means you're not collecting as much data, which means you're not getting that many bites, which means you're not catching that many fish. So I would say, as a beginner, one of the biggest mistakes guys make is starting too small. Do not be scared to go big with your glide baits at the beginning. Number 2, another huge mistake that beginner swim bait anglers make is they do not have the proper equipment. Now, when I say proper equipment, I mean a rod, reel, line setup that is made to handle. So obviously I said, hey, you need to start out with big swim baits or bigger swim baits. But then the other thing is you need to have the proper equipment. So when I think about proper equipment swim baiting, when I started out with like a flipping rod, like a 7'6" heavy. with, you know, like an 8:1 gear ratio, because this was my flipping rod when I would use jigs around docks or whatever. And immediately I started losing fish. I lost so many fish because the tip was not slow enough. So when you think about glide baiting and swim baits in general, they have treble hooks. Treble hooks are smaller than single hooks. So a lot of times when those fish go to head shaking, they can throw the bait. You want a limber rod that can absorb their head shakes. If your rod is too fast, when they go to head shake, the rod springs back and throws slack in the line, which is why they throw the bait. Where if you have a rod that's parabolic, I'm gonna step back so you can kind of see how this rod works. If you have a rod that's parabolic, that bends down into the handle. I mean, it might be hard to tell, but that rod is bending all the way down into here. When you have a rod that is parabolic, all of a sudden it can absorb their head shakes. When those fish are head shaking fast, I mean, look at that rod, just, it's slow, and it's a slow taper, and that fish can head shake, and the rod stays fully flexed. It keeps pressure on the bait, which makes the bait harder for them to throw. So you need the proper equipment. Like I said at the beginning, all the links to all of my favorite rods and reels, line, everything is down in the description. But I'm using a Tatula 150. This is a 7'9" Tatula swim bait rod, rated for up to, I think, 5 ounces, 20-pound fluorocarbon line, and this is like a 3.5 or 4 ounce bait. But that booger right there, it absorbs head shakes, and it is absolutely fire. All right, another monster mistake that swim bait beginners make, and my goodness, I was a guide for over a decade. I ran over 200 trips, mostly 250 trips most years, but at least over 200 trips a year. The number one mistake I would see that guys would make is they would pause when they were glide baiting. What would happen is they'd be working the glide bait, they'd be reeling it, there'd be a follower come up behind it, and immediately you're like, oh my gosh, it's behind it. So what do you think? Instinctively, you think pause. Well, you should never pause your glide bait. I have never, when a bluegill's being chased on the bank, when I see bass blowing up on shad, when I see bass chasing shad, baitfish, whatever, I've never seen the baitfish just sit completely still. They should, because the bass don't like that. Bass like to chase. They like that kind of competitive chasing. You know, it really kind of just fires up their instinctual predation, like, I'm going to eat this. It's trying to flee and I will catch it. So when you get a follower, what I do, I actually start pulling the bait away faster, 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 and try to look like a fleeing bait fish. So there's a little secret within that I'm not going to share. But the key is to make it look like a fleeing bait fish. So all of a sudden, when those fish are following it, I do what's called a do or die. I actually speed up my retrieve and how that bait is working, which entices those big bass to come up and eat the bait. Do not, and I mean do not, pause that, because they'll swim up to it, they'll pause, and they're like, that's not real. They know if they're swimming up to it and it starts going away, they're like, oh, it felt me, and I'm gonna make sure I get it. And they'll swim up there and absolutely chew the crap out of that bait. They won't miss it. They will absolutely inhale. A lot of times they'll even take their body, their freaking catty corner their body, and they'll absolutely freaking headshot the bait. And it might be hard to see just because of the light and everything, but the amount of tooth marks on the front half of that bait and on the eye and everything is just absolutely insane. But when you're getting a follower, a lot of beginners, they will stop the bait. Make sure you actually speed that bait up to entice that bite. I call it a do or die. They're either going to commit to it and eat it, or they're going to peel off it and say, man, that thing's too cracked out for me. Peace. But either way, that is what you should do. 4. Here's the deal. Some of you are going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not fair. You can't say that. But I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. A lot of guys like to go cheap early on. And I'm just telling you, there's a reason why a lot of glide baits and swim baits are so expensive. One, the R&D, research and development, that goes into the baits to develop these things and make them as good as possible, as true as possible, as tuned as possible. That's one thing. But the other thing is they produce giant fish, the expensive baits. I'm serious, they do. And I always tell people, they're like, man, I don't know if I could ever pay $200 for a bait. And I say, well, put a price tag on a 7-pounder, put a price tag on a 9, put a price tag on your personal best, the biggest bass you'll ever catch in your life. Put a price tag on it, because every time you're throwing a glide bait, every time you're throwing a big swim bait, you are fishing for a different caliber of fish. In fact, I love rolling up on the lake and fishing through an area and I'm fishing behind somebody, or, you know, I'll sit the boat down and someone's like, you know, people just be like, you know, hey, I'm kind of fishing here. I'm like, hey, no offense, I don't mean this personally. We're not fishing for the same fish. Like, you're probably fishing for 3 pounders, 2.5, 3 pounders, 4 pounders. I'm fishing for like one fish in this area, if it's even here, and I'm throwing a monster bait. And usually, like I said, they are expensive baits. They're expensive because they're tighter tuned, they have better action, they're in high demand. Why are they in high demand? Because the guys that are throwing them know they work and they buy them. That's just the truth of the situation. So many guys will go cheap, and hey, seriously, you can do that. There's plenty of baits out there in that $30 to $50 price point. River to CS waiver, you got the Spro, KGB. There's some baits that are in that price, but I'm serious. The deal is those little bit more expensive baits have better action, have better tunability, and create giant bites. They just have the ability to create giant bites, get giant bites, and that is the deal. All right, the 5th and final mistake that most beginner swim bait anglers make is honestly, they just don't throw it enough. I think so many people, they watch my videos, they might watch other videos on YouTube, and they say, oh man, I'm just gonna go out and smash them. And they don't realize that, hey, sometimes there's 3 hours between bites. Sometimes I don't get bit for the first 4 hours of the day, and then there's a feeding window where I just load the boat. But so many guys, they think like, man, I'm gonna throw this thing and I'm immediately gonna start getting bites. And that is not how it works. Glide bait, swim baiting, it is such a dialed in, fine-tuned technique. It's a technique you need to have a lot of experience with in order to make it work. So the best thing to do, honestly, I know a lot of people are not as privileged as me and they're not able to be on the water as much as me. So when they go, they just go to what they're used to. They fish the same areas with the same baits. They catch the same fish they always catch. I always tell people, right, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result, right? And here's the deal. You're probably getting the same results because you go to the same areas, you throw the same baits. The reality is, if you want to get better swim baiting, you just need to throw it more. You need to change things up. You need to change your perspective in how you are targeting those fish. So those are the 5 biggest mistake beginner swim baiters make. Let's recap. 1 is they start wanting to go too small of baits. I always say, go big or go home, but seriously, go big because you will collect more data, you will catch more fish naturally because you'll have more followers because the baits move more water. Number 2, having the right equipment. You want to have the right equipment. The next one is don't pause your bait. Man, don't pause your bait. When you have a follower, get after it, rip, do or die, take that thing, pull it away from, create a reaction strike, make them want it. That's the deal. Number 4, so many guys just want to go cheap. They just kind of want to dip their toes in the water and they want to go cheap. And there's a reason why expensive baits are the deal and work so well. Man, they are just finer products. They're tuned, they're stable, they're incredible baits, and that's why they are the deal. And then number 5, the final mistake that beginner swim baiters make is they just don't throw it enough. Just lock it in your hand, man. Have confidence. Know that those big fish, they want a bigger meal. And I promise, if you lock it in your hand a little longer, you're gonna catch more fish, catch giants. It's gonna give you more confidence. You'll keep it locked in your hand longer, and all of a sudden, you're gonna turn into a swim bait fisherman that catches them, puts them in the boat, size and numbers. So anyways, guys, I appreciate you a ton for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Would love to hear from you down below in the comment section, and don't forget to click subscribe. Till next time, I'm out. See y'all.